Okay, folks, it is 8:30.
Boker
So,
Tov.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Good
Shalom.
morning, good Shabbos. Such a pleasure to be with everyone. Let us thank Hashem for the gift of learning Torah together. Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam,
haolam,
asher
asher
kiddushanu
kiddushanu
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav
v'tzivanu
v'tzivanu
la'asot
la'asot
b'divrei
b'divrei
Torah.
Torah.
Va'aretna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'vinu,
ובפי
ובפי
עמך
עמך
בית
בית ישראל,
ישראל,
ונהיה
ונהיה
אנחנו
אנחנו
וצאצאינו
וצאצאינו
וצאצאי
וצאצאי
עמך
עמך
בית
בית
ישראל.
ישראל,
כולנו
כולנו
יודעי
יודעי
שמך
שמך
ולומדי
ולומדי
תורתך
תורתך
לשמה.
לשמה.
ברוך
ברוך
אתה
אתה
אדוני
אדוני
מלמד
מלמד
תורה
תורה
לעמו
לעמו
ישראל.
ישראל.
ברוך
ברוך
אתה
אתה
אדוני
אדוני
אלוהינו
אלוהינו
מלך
מלך
העולם,
העולם,
אשר
אשר
בחר
בחר
בנו
בנו
מכל
מכל
העמים,
העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm just so excited for this content today. This is such a, to me, very compelling set of questions. What we have here is the Talmud's own origin story. This is the Talmud asking and answering the question, how did the Talmud come to be? How did Rabbinic Judaism come to be? After all, in the 5 books of Moses, there's no Rabbinic Judaism. How did Rabbinic Judaism come to be? How did Rabbinic discourse come to be? How did rabbis come to be? How did the Talmud come to be? And this is the Talmud's answer. Now, here's what makes this so interesting. This is a story that will be familiar to everyone who's on this class. Everyone has heard this. You've heard it in sermons. You've read about it in religious school. And here's the, and the way that we usually hear this out is it's a Ghazi hero tale. It's a Ghazi hero tale about Yochanan ben Zakkai. What a hero. What a visionary. What a hero. In the context is it's the year 70, and the Roman legion is outside the walls of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is soon and surely to fall, and soon and surely to be incinerated, and the temple is soon and surely to be destroyed. And in the midst of this impending chaos and gloom and doom, our hero, Yochanan ben Zakkai, gets smuggled out of Jerusalem in a coffin. He gets an audience with Vespasian, who is the general of Rome, and Yochanan ben Zakkai does, he correctly predicts, you're going to become the king. You're going to become the emperor. It calls him a melech. And Vespasian, there's some dialogue, which we'll pass through. Vespasian, in fact, becomes the emperor in real time and is so taken with this rabbi's prediction that he says basically to the rabbi, ask me a wish and I'll grant it. And what Yochanan ben Zakkai asked for is 3 things. He asked for Yavne, which is going to be the yeshiva where Rabbinic Judaism is founded. He asked for the leadership structure of Yavne to be blessed by Rome, namely the family of Gamliel. And don't forget this, don't miss this. This is just so important and so interesting. I have a friend named Rabbi Tzadok who has digestion issues, can't eat, can't come in, can't go out, digestion issues. Can we have a doctor for Rabbi Tzadok? Okay? And that's usually where the story ends, and Rabbinic Judaism is founded. But the only way you think this is a Ghazi hero story, the only way you think it's a Ghazi hero story is if you don't read the Talmud. Because the Talmud does not regard the Talmud's founding as a hero story. The Talmud is filled with unresolved questions. And the last thing is, in the story, is the image of Titus, who is Vespasian's successor, who is the general, coming into the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies, with a prostitute and fornicating with her on a Torah scroll in the Kodesh Kadoshim. End of the story. So, we have 4 questions that we're going to be asking. And the question is, how does the basic meta question is, how does the Talmud itself regard Yochanan ben Zakkai? Does the Talmud itself, especially with that coda, regard him as a hero? 4 questions, and we'll look at it inside. One is, why is it that Yochanan ben Zakkai has to get smuggled out in a coffin to begin with? And here's the larger question, which is, when there's an external threat, you would hope that the divisions within a society would heal. But very often when there's an external threat, the divisions within a society get intensified and amplified, and people can deal with each other even less effectively in the presence of an external threat then and perhaps now. Second question is, Yochanan ben Zakkai's ask for the Yavne, seems like he's only saving the elite of the elite of the elite. You know, the kids who get into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford, give me a space for my best scholars. Everybody else is going to burn to death, which is what happens. And how do we regard that? Third is the Rabbi Tzadok question. And then the fourth is this coda with the harlot in the Kodesh Kadoshim. What is the Talmud saying with that? So, without further ado, the first question is going to be, why do they have to smuggle them out anyway? And what does that mean? So, Elisa, will you pick up? And if you haven't read the text, we'll just read it in little bits and pieces of it loudly and unpack it. They were on page 1, second column, last paragraph. Abba Sikra.
Abba Sikra, the head of the Bar Yonai in Jerusalem, was the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's sister,
Bar Yonai are zealots. These are armed zealots. Keep going.
who've already burned the stores of all the food there.
Yes.
Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sent the following message to him: "Come meet me in secret." Abba Sikra came. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "How long are you going to act in this way and kill everyone through starvation?" Abba Sikra said to him, "What can I do? If I say anything to the Bar Yonai that is contrary to their agenda, they will kill me." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Find a way for me to get out of the city. Perhaps there will be a small measure of salvation."
So let's pause here. First of all, isn't it interesting that the zealots burned their own food, and that the guy who's the head of the zealots, Abba Sikra, is riding the head of a tiger, riding a lion, and feels he's going to get swallowed up by the lion. The head of the zealots can't control the zealots, and they're hurting their own people. They're starving their own people. What's going on here? Anybody?
It feels like a very modern story. I mean, this is happening all over the world today, where people who are driving an agenda are keeping their own people suffering in order, I mean, in this room, we could name multiple cases of that, keeping their own people suffering. And then, of course, those who are prone to violence and those who are, you know, whoever it is who's been the military or gang leaders in those places become really a mob that is difficult to control. We've seen it all over the world.
Yeah. And what's so powerful about this is that the head of the mob is terrified of the mob.
We've also seen that all
Yeah.
over the world.
Yeah.
Is he terrified, or is he just clear that to say anything to stop them would just do to flap his? I mean, like, I don't see him as being terrified. I see him as being like, I can't control that. They are what they're going to be, and I also, from their point of view, and it's funny. I teach this story to middle schoolers every year, and the middle schoolers always get most excited about these tyrants, the Bar Yonai. They are so enthralled with this, like, why do they do this? What do they do? And one of the things that we often talk about is like, what's in it for them? And sometimes one of the things is like, is it that they think, you know, the traditional read is that they think that if they burn all the storks, they'll be forced to go out and fight, and that people will have to fight and they will have no choice, and that they will get to force their agenda. But there's also, I think, a plausible read that they think that God will save them. That if they create disaster, that's when God has rushed in the past. And so if they just create a situation, it's not dire enough for God to swoop in yet. But if it is dire enough, God will swoop in. And so they're people of faith, and they're people that believe in something, and that's, I think, the hardest thing to counter.
Elias?
I have a different twist on the story. I believe that Abba Sikra is one of the zealots. All right?
He is a zealot. Yes.
No. In mine as well. That he's only saying this to his uncle to keep him quiet and you know,
Right.
but he actually identifies strongly with the feelings and the policies that the zealots are doing.
Right.
That he's not saying, oh no, I'm going to get killed. Inside him, he feels that that's the way of going.
Okay, so here's a question I just want to throw out there. You have an uncle and a nephew, family members. One is the founder of Rabbinic Judaism, and one is the head of the Jewish Defense League, you know, of these zealots. What do you make of the fact that within a family you have, you know, such floridly opposite feelings about the issues of the day? Could that
None of
happen?
us could identify with that at all these days.
Yeah, and you have this all.
Yeah.
You have this all the time, where, you know, with the especially nowadays when families are so dispersed. I mean, you know, you think about their families where 3 generations ago, you had, Orthodox rabbis,
Right.
and then in this generation, you have, either converts out of Judaism or Jews for Jesus.
Right.
It just happens.
So
It
just
just happens.
can I ask one last question, and then this is this first. I mean, and then they're going to smuggle him in the coffin, etc., and that's how he gets out. But here's my question that I wanted to pose to you. This is what's really interesting to me about this piece of the story. Why is it? Why is it that when there's an external threat to society, like the Roman Legion or like COVID-19, that the divisions in a society would heal and let's all work together? And instead, when there's an external threat, this story tells us those divisions harden. Why can't they heal? Why do they harden?
So I'm confused by the question because I think like sometimes they heal and sometimes they harden, right? There are moments in history where both forces happen at different times and in different ways. But I think, if you're talking about the birth of a differentiation, I mean, really, because you had sort of two narratives going on, multiple narratives, but you have those who believe that Jerusalem is the only place, right? It has to happen here. And then you have a diaspora Jewry that's already out there, which Yavne then solidifies. It doesn't create, it solidifies. And when you have these dueling narratives, you'll always have people who feel like it's right and just to be on one side of the narrative. Take our own issues today of those who, let's not be political and let's just look back to the very beginning of the pandemic when there were those who said, let's just let it kind of burn out through the population. The only way to get to herd immunity is to let it burn out through everybody. And therefore, what they want is as many people to get sick as quickly as possible. Collateral damage of those who die be damned. Like this is our only way through it. And they said if you shut down, you're just going to schlep it out, and we'll be there in infinity. And then you had other people who said, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Like one death is one death. Let's do everything we can to shut down. And those people, right, have different visions of what the world looks like facing this crisis. Are they bad on one side and good on another? I think they're different visions of how we get to that peaceful place.
Yeah, so I just want to, I mean, maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm smoking hashish, but I think about one of America's greatest moments, and the word greatest comes into it, the greatest generation, with Hitler and with the Second World War and with Pearl Harbor. It felt like the nation came together. And when you go, and if you've ever been to the Omaha Beach and D-Day, where all the American soldiers are laid to rest, they are a very diverse group of soldiers and you get the sense that an entire nation, black and white and Christian and Muslim and Jew, came together in the face of Adolf Hitler. They came together. The divisions healed. And what is the algorithm when sometimes the divisions heal and we all fight Hitler together? And what's the algorithm when the divisions harden, like Rome or COVID-19, and we just melt away into disintegrate into dysfunctionalness? I don't know if there's an answer, but that's definitely a question that emerges. Lord Dan Essen, that's why you're Lord. What's the answer?
I was thinking about what Michelle just said. This is like a Shammai and Hillel thing. It's the idea that that the zealots they're both thinking l'shem shamayim.
Right.
How am I gonna protect the society? What's the algorithm that when people come together versus not? It may have to do with the length of time. For instance, I think that when COVID started, we're thinking 3 months, right? And with countries together, you don't have to go back to the Second World War. Think of 9/11. How long were we a unified country after 9/11? I would say 3 months, and then divisions. The divisions that were there then resurfaced and then became harder.
Yeah.
So I think both of those examples to me raise an interesting question, which is like, were we unified towards a holy good in World War II, or did we actually turn against our own populations? We just interned the Japanese and we turned away the Jews, and we actually, like, when faced with an external threat, we turn towards violence and oppression. And it's 9/11 is, I mean, we're pulling out of Afghanistan after 20 years now. Our response to that external threat was very intense violence. And I'm not talking about whether it's justified or not. I just think that there is something about being threatened and being able to diffuse that energy into intensity. And I'm not sure that this is any different, that is any different. Like, these zealots really thought that they were doing the right thing. There was no way, there was no leeway. Like, the Romans are there, they're camping out. You can see them from the city. There's no way to win. And so there are three choices, right? You surrender, you all die. You get enslaved, you get burned, like, that's terrible. You fight, you probably all die. You get burned, it's terrible. Or you get hope that God intervenes. And they really thought that, if half the city thought that they should surrender, then that meant everybody surrendered. If half the city thought they should fight, that meant everybody fought. There was just no gray
Okay,
zone.
so
And
let me-
that's the key right there. What Eliza just identified, which is when you have a zero-sum game, like when you have a situation where you can't actually implement both visions, one has to win. That's where you get passionate division.
So let me pivot now to the moment where we get perhaps not a zero-sum game. We're going to move to the part of the story where Yochanan ben Zakkai is smuggled in the coffin. He gets outside the walls. He meets up with Vespasian. He calls him a king, and then he predicts you're going to become king, and he becomes king. Okay. Now I want to just do a quick whip around. You're Yochanan ben Zakkai, and you have just correctly, played to the new emperor's ego. And he's very impressed with your prescience that you knew that he was going to be the king. And he says, you know what? I'm going to grant you a wish. Okay? What would you have said if you were Yochanan ben Zakkai in that moment? Let me just go around, quick wrap around. Elias, you're Yochanan ben Zakkai. I'm Vespasian. I'm going to grant you a wish. What is it?
Two things before that, a couple of things very quickly, and then I'll get to the point. The first one, Wes, is you have a son-in-law that is Italian. If you want to impress him, call it Vespasiano and not Vespasian or whatever you are saying, the American way. Vespasiano. And second, my dear friend Michelle, seems like you are bragging today. You are showing all of us that you have a book of Talmud, and I don't need the copies. I'm Michelle Robinson. I have my own Talmud here. It's like me bringing a Lewandowski published book in 1820. So I mean, kol hakavod.
The story
I'm Rabbi
actually
Robinson.
continues at
I
Cantor.
have my book of Talmud.
Yes.
Anyways, so now let's get to the point.
Yeah, so you're Yochanan ben Zakkai. I'm
Yes.
Vespasian. Wow, you predicted that I'm Caesar. I'm going to grant you your wish. What would you like?
It's fascinating. It's fascinating because if, I know that we tend to tell this story in the way that rabbinical Judaism was created and he was a hero. But if you have to say to me in which way you would identify in those days, I would go with the zealots. I will be the one fighting. I won't be the one studying.
So what? Okay, but that's
I'll
not my-
defend my homeland no matter what by the arms, not by saying, okay, hey, save the Lord Nelson and, grant us, Temple
sure?
Emmanuel for us to
Okay,
go and
but-
study.
Okay, so you're not with the program. Dan, you're Yochanan ben Zakkai. What do you ask for? You've been smuggled out. You've got this moment. What do you ask for?
I think, given the fact that he's giving him this really magnanimous wish, I would say, give us more time to figure it out. Let's do a big compromise. You guys don't destroy the city. You don't kill us all, and we'll find a way to be your servants, but also be able to maintain some sense of who we are. That would be the question.
Okay,
I
so
think.
And I honestly would say, give me some good food, pasta, pizza, pesto, not matzah, please.
okay, Michelle, what do? You're Yochanan ben Zakkai.
I mean, of course, the magical thinking is
Yeah.
what do you do in this moment? You ask for Jerusalem. You say,
Right.
could you please move your troops and let us live in peace?
Right.
All of us here. But that really is magical thinking that we apply from the historical. When we're looking at it from a safe distance, we can say, why didn't he ask for more? He should have asked for more. And that's actually something that happens throughout our history, right? Why didn't they do X, Y,
Right.
or Z. It
This-
could have been better.
P.S. Not just from a distance. In the sages themselves, in the next paragraph, are going to ask this question.
Yeah, although the
including a
reason
sage-
I brought the book is that I'm not entirely certain that the ending that you bring is the ending.
Okay.
So that
We have a
said-
Lord version for
Yeah. But
So,
Lordy.
so in any case, we'll get there when we get there. But for right now, what I want to say is that I think it's very easy for us, or even for those who are writing this particular piece of the Talmud. I'm not sure it says what you think it says. For to criticize, like, why didn't you do more? And that's the constant refrain of both our history and our tradition. Why not more? But there are times when somebody is looking and they do the best they can in the moment that they have. And perhaps he was looking around and he read the room. He understood the audience. They've got a lot invested here. They're not just going to pick up and go away. We are going to actually have to take what we can get. And so if we're taking what we can get, what's my ask in this moment that will do the most for planting a future? And that's what he does. And that's the traditional read of the story, which
Right.
is that he creates an outpost that enables the ideas and ideals to continue to grow and flourish, with the hopes that over time they'll be able to rebuild.
Okay. Just one question, not for you now. I want to hear Elise's voice, but why not plead in the alternative? Why not say, hey, Vespasian, I'll tell you what we'd really love. I'm going to be the most pro-Roman rabbi you've ever seen. There will never be a more pro-Roman rabbi than me. So let's make this deal.
So can I?
You guys, you back away and let me work with my people. Don't destroy Jerusalem. Don't destroy the temple. And what you're going to have is the most loyal vassal state.
So
of happy Jews.
can I answer that?
Yes.
Because you actually answered it already with the story that you began with Abba Sikra. Why not ask for Jerusalem? Because he knows that even if he gets Jerusalem from the Romans, it's already radicalized. It's already got, I mean, it's the cynical read, but that there's no way that even if he says, I'll be the most loyal to Rome, he knows he's got a population that will not be the most loyal to Rome.
Yeah.
But
Lisa,
that
Lisa, what would you do?
That also undermines the whole purpose of saving the Jewish people. If you're going to be the most loyal to Rome, then you might then why not just let them siege the city and get it over with? Like I hear the desire to say he should have protected more human life. He should have tried to think about Jerusalem. But I think he actually acted well. I mean, also when he comes in to Vespasio, how do you say that? Vespasiano. When he comes into that guy, it's not like it's a warm welcome, like, hey, Yochanan ben Zakkai, so great to see you. I love the Jews. Welcome, come on and have some pesto, have some pasta. Like, he's like, you deserve to die on 2 counts. Like, his first thing is guards seize him, kill this man. It's not a warm welcome. And the reason, he says you deserve to die because you're either traitorous, calling me emperor before I am, or you're a jerk and you didn't come tell me when I could have known I was emperor and could have done something about it.
Right.
Either way, it's not a warm reception. So I think that Yochanan ben Zakkai is clear about what is possible. It is not possible to. He doesn't want to create a Roman state. He doesn't want to be. What he wants is to get out of their control, and the only way he can do that is by sacrificing some people and some places, and then
Okay,
creating
so
this
now
other.
let me
thing.
ask. No, let me go on now. I want to just go to what he says. So ask me now for something I can give you. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Ten li Yavne v'chachamecha." Give me the town of Yavne and its sages, and the family of Rabban Gamliel, and doctors to cure Rabbi Tzadok. So I want to bring a word in that's a very modern word. I mean, it literally electrified our country in 2016. It's still around. The word elite. That word is not said here, but when Yochanan ben Zakkai, I mean, I hear all of your cautionary notes about Yochanan ben Zakkai and what's possible. On the one hand, back in the farm, he had the zealots who would kill Jews, who would kill Romans, and on the other hand, he had a not very hospitable Vespasian, and Rome was really invested with all of its military in destroying Jerusalem. So he had to read the room and deal with what is. I get that. Okay, I get that. By the way, Rabbi Akiva doesn't get that. We'll come back to him in a minute, which is the next paragraph. But When he says, "Give me the town of Yavna and its sages," here's another way to read what he's going to say, which is, you know what? You're going to kill 97% of the Jewish people, but the few kids who get in early action to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford, I'm going to take them to a yeshiva, a smart farm, and we're going to reconstitute Judaism with the smartest of the smart. These kids all got 1,600 on their SATs. They all got in early. Let them come to Yavna, and the rest, okay, they'll die. Um, how do you factor in, by the way, which might not have been his intent, and maybe he didn't have any choice, but that was that was the impact, if not the intent, that was the impact, that the kids who got in early to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Stanford formed a yeshiva, and everybody else died in the fires. And how do you factor in the elitist critique to Yochanan ben Zakkai? Lord
Yeah,
Nesson.
so I have a couple of things. So first of all, I was thinking that one of the reasons that Abba Sakra went along with the plan is that he wanted to get rid of his uncle. He said his uncle, he's thinking like his uncle's just a pain. Get him out of the city, then I can have more control. Which goes back to what Michelle said earlier.
Okay.
But the other thing is, I was thinking that there's this book that's called "A World Lit Only by Fire," and it talks about how when the Mongols came and destroyed society, all the way, and so that left no intellectuals, and this is why the Middle Ages started, because there was no one that knew how to do anything. Everybody was killed, and when they came, they knew exactly who the elite were of the society, and those were the first ones that they killed. So it was actually a plan. So the idea that what Rabbi Yochanan is doing is I think actually has a lot of merit to it. It has a lot of thought behind it. That maybe perhaps the elite should be the ones that in some way need to survive, because for instance, if your car breaks down, Wes, can you fix it? If your electricity goes out, can you fix it?
This is why Hashem has created AAA.
I understand that, but in other words, if everybody that knows how to do anything, if your technology doesn't work, I know that any of you guys are way better than me. I can't turn my computer on. Oh, press the button, right? Once those people are gone, then the rest of the society completely disintegrates. So I think that Rabbi Yochanan had really a good plan, even though it does seem very very mercenary.
Yeah, I think
what-
I was thinking of the book Fahrenheit 451, like that there are the keepers of the book. There's the image of people who are going, not yet, right? It actually is sort of they're a sleeper cell. For a long time, by the way, a sleeper cell that is going to be able to maintain and pursue the possibility of planting a future. And in many ways, Yavna becomes problematic, not only in the Talmud, but actually even in the modern world when we think of it that way. You look at the Haredi communities who still believe themselves to be the
Right.
keepers of a tradition that they are responsible for maintaining in its fullness.
Right.
In that way, we continue to have this tension between, should Judaism be about all the people everywhere in the world? Should it be about Jerusalem? Should it be about worship there, or should it be sort of a sacred seed that is holding what is holy and precious against the forces of the world that would threaten to destroy it?
Elisa, how do you disarm or deal with the elitist critique of Yochanan?
So I'm not sure that calling these scholars elite, I mean, in a world where education is accessible for everyone, and we see that even with Akiva, right? Like Akiva was not born into scholarship. He was not born into a family that was able to give that. He didn't get the early admissions application. He didn't go to Harvard or Yale or MIT. He was just a guy. He was maybe your AAA operator. Like he was just a shepherd. He was doing his thing, and then he is able to learn later in life, and he's able to become one of these scholars, not out of because he's an elite person, but because education is open to anyone. And so I think rather than reading it as elite, I would read it as in order for Judaism to survive, in order for the people to survive, they had to think creatively about how to completely reformat Judaism. And so what he was asking for is, I want a group of people that are going to be most flexible and most able to do this work, right? It's not that they were perpetuating Judaism. They actually had to write down what happened. Like they were just like documenters. They were like, what did we used to do in the temple? We have no idea how this will be useful in the future. There's no way to do it anymore. The temple is destroyed. Our world is destroyed. But hopefully, if we are able to preserve as much of our history as possible someday, sometime in the future,
Right.
they will be able to put this back together. And
Yeah.
so I don't see it as like an elitist thing. I see it as a practical.
I don't see it either. I think that basically, this must be the first time we agree. Anyways,
So exciting.
so-
Baruch atah Adonai
Wow.
Eloheinu melech she'achiyanu
Wow,
v'kiyamanu
the
v'higanu lezman hazeh.
Amen. Chazdei Hashem, shkoyach.
Chazdei Hashem.
Chazdei Hashem, shkoyach. Anyways,
Chazdei Hashem.
I have a problem not so much with what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asks the Vespasiano, but his own idea before that. I need to get out of here. I'm very different from all these people. I'm not one of them. Once he's out, he's so happy. And he says, give me anything. I'll save this guy who ate so much matzah. He has indigestion. He has a problem. We need to save him. But the fact that he wants to leave his own people behind, that's what troubles me here. Not so much what he asked.
Well, what about the fact that he left them behind to save them?
To save who?
To save the Jews.
I think he left them behind to save Judaism.
To save to save them behind to save Judaism. Yeah, what she said.
The way he saw Judaism.
Yeah.
This to me is a little bit like modern day in Israel, with the Haredim and the ones who the secular guys. They both feel that they have their own way of bringing Israel to a great place, and they don't see each other. They don't understand each
So
other.
I want to just deepen this to note that there seems to be a lot of sympathy for Yochanan ben Zakkai in this room, especially among Michelle and Eliza, and some critique and concern that Elias shared. And here's the question that I want to ask you, which is the fact that the Talmud itself, this is the Talmud's origin story, weighs in. It doesn't say, "Oh my God, what an amazing leader Yochanan ben Zakkai is! What a visionary! What a hero!" It says, "Wait," and it leaves us kind of unresolved with the coda. So I'm looking on page 56b2. Rav Yosef, or as some say, Rabbi Akiva, who's a pretty heavy hitter, recited the following verse about Yochanan ben Zakkai. God turns wise men backwards and makes their thinking foolish. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai should have said to Vespasian, leave them alone this time. That is, he should have beseeched Vespasian to spare Jerusalem. Why did he only save a few scholars at Yavna? Why not save Jerusalem? Why not at least try? But then the Gemara explains why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did not request the salvation of Jerusalem, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai thought to himself that Vespasian might not fulfill so great a request, and there will be not even a small measure of salvation. Hatzalah purta. There won't. If I ask for too much, I'll get nothing. So I'll ask for a smaller request. And at least now, and so you now have this debate between Rav Yosef or Rabbi Akiva. By the way, I was learning this with my father-in-law this week, and my father-in-law pointed out Rabbi Akiva was a political radical, and we know from a few weeks ago Rabbi Akiva sided with Bar Kokhba and got flayed alive as a result, and that he got into politics and bet on the wrong course. So take that with a grain of salt. But then you have the other view saying, hey, Michelle's point of view, Elise's point of view, Hatzalah Porta, let's save Judaism if we can't save the Jews. But here's the question that I want to ask. And Michelle, I'm very eager. It looks like you've got something behind door number 3 to hit me over the head with. But here's how the story ends, which feels to me like a coda that is addressing this ongoing machloket between the two positions, right? The Gemara returns to the central narrative. Vespasian went to Rome. He sent Titus to take charge of the military campaign, okay? And in this connection, Scripture states, and he shall say, where is their God, the rock in which they sought refuge? Like, why isn't God doing anything? And why isn't God doing anything to what? This is a reference to the evil Titus, who profaned and blasphemed the one above. Me'asa, what did he do? Titus seized a harlot in his hand. He entered the chamber of the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kedoshim. He spread out a Torah scroll, and he fornicated upon it with this prostitute. Okay, and then with the sword he slashed the parochet. All right. So in other words, as a result of Yochanan ben Zakkai's decision, two things happen. Yavna is created, and rabbinic Judaism happens. Yay! And Titus fornicates with a prostitute on a Torah parchment in the Kodesh Kedoshim. And it feels like, and that part, by the way, is never told in Hebrew school. And that part, when rabbis give sermons about this, they never talk about that. And when you teach this to your middle school kids, you never talk about it. But the Talmud keeps that in there as a coda. So my question is, what does that coda say about how the Talmud itself sees Yochanan ben Zakkai?
To me, the answer is clear, and nobody will be able to change my mind because I'm a radical zealot. Not just that was a joke. You have to laugh. Anyways, to me, this is the Talmud saying to Rabbi Yochanan, because of your favor that you ask, the thing that you ask, this is what happened to our holiest place.
In
Is
other,
it that, or is it that?
in other words, you're saying that he's saying that the Talmud is saying Yochanan ben Zakkai, not such a hero.
Right.
Not such
This
a
is a
hero.
criticism directly directed to him.
Oh.
Nothing else. End of the story. Shabbat shalom.
Or
Alisa.
it's possible.
No, we agree, Alisa.
I know. I was with you then. I said the
It lasted
Shafiano.
a little while.
It was great. Or it's a read of what could have been of all of Judaism. That all of Judaism could have been disgraced. That all of Judaism could be violated. That all of Judaism could be torn apart. And that because of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, it didn't go that way. Because of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that's not our story. That's the story of Titus in Jerusalem and a Torah scroll, but that is not the story of Judaism. And so I don't see this as a read
He
on
saved us from
Yochanan.
that.
Yeah.
It's not that he caused it, it's he saved us from that.
Right.
at all.
And so
Not at all.
I love Elisa's read
No,
from a
come on.
traditional
Oh,
perspective.
you're a Talmud scholar with a Talmud
from-
in your hand.
So from a traditional
Bragging.
perspective, I love the perspective that you're bringing here, and you all have activated my cynical side today. So from my cynical side, I'm also going to say this story really serves the rabbinic narrative here, because in a sense, what you're doing, if you're building a world that is dependent upon these books that you have and that you hold and that you delve into and that you learn, and you're saying we are the source of your Jewish identity, you want people to love Jerusalem. You want them to be passionately engaged in Jerusalem, to care, and yet you want them to know they can't go back. Like maybe someday, maybe in a new time, if we plant the seeds, but in a sense that this, you want them to know that this wasn't a viable option. Like we couldn't have made any other choice in this moment. And the fact is that Rabbi Akiva's zealotry, and in fact the way in which he dies, is really proof of that. You know, we could have stood and we could have burned in Jerusalem together, and it would have been perhaps valiant, and it would have been perhaps beautiful, and we would have been a dead tradition.
Right, and
And-
like Rabbi Akiva ended up dead.
Like Rabbi
Quite
Akiva
painfully
ended
so.
up quite painfully dead. But there's somebody left to tell the story, and there's somebody left to tell the story because we had the visionary who was willing to move and to create a different space, and that does become the narrative. And the reason that I brought the book is that I don't think that this story of the defiling of the temple actually is the last word here.
I need to ask all of you a question once you
Yeah,
finish.
no, keep going.
Once you
Michelle,
finish, I
Michelle,
need to
keep
ask
going.
you
You're
a
on a roll.
question.
Okay, if you look at the last page that you Xeroxed here,
Yeah.
you see, then I saw, right? So now you have a question. What do you mean? Then I saw what? What did I see here? And as you look in 56b3 here in this book, you
Knock
you
yourself out.
continue, right? Then I saw the wicked men gathered. Fine, you guys can laugh if you want.
Okay, go,
but
go,
this
go,
is
go,
what
go.
we
You're
do,
an expert in
people.
Talmud, Baroness
This is what we
Robinson.
do, right? They create this whole midrash about the things that are buried and the things that are revealed, and there's this beautiful piece here in which they say that actually this whole painful moment becomes a stand-in. Hold on, just give me 30 seconds. You all can interrupt
Can
me
I
while I
say a
reorient
reflection in the
myself.
meantime?
Yes.
In the meantime?
While she's looking.
So I have a hard time, Michelle and all of you, saying that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a visionary. Why? Because obviously we know the end of the story. We know that thanks to him, you guys are here. Okay? You are
Also
our
you.
You are a fabulous rabbis here, okay? Yes, thank you, Alisa.
You were part of the same
I
tradition.
have a hard time reading just this story and believing that Yohanan was a visionary. He was a guy who said in this story only, I'm not like them. I need to get out. I need to save myself and my close ones. This guy, he's my close friend. He's suffering from something in the stomach. I want to save them there. What visionary? I don't think he was thinking at the time, I'll create a school of Mishnah, and I will create this and I will do that because that's the way of Judaism. He was selfish and
So,
he was
well,
saving
but I would-
himself.
Okay, so I just
So
want to
wait, I
pivot
should
off
say,
of that for a
I-
second.
I know that
wait,
the
wait.
story tells
Right.
us something
No,
different.
no. But while Michelle's looking, I
Yeah.
want to just dwell because we're running out of time. I want to dwell on the aspect that to me is so interesting here, which is here he is, and the Roman army is there. Jerusalem is about to be destroyed and defamed, and he makes his big play for the yeshiva, and he throws in a doctor to save Rabbi Tzadok. And the Talmud, while it's debating these mega issues, has the following. I just love this, and my question is, why? What's it doing here? One of the requests made by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was for doctors to cure Rabbi Tzadok. The Gemara relates how Rabbi Tzadok was cured. The doctors who cured Rabbi Tzadok, what was the treatment they administered?
Yeah.
The first day they fed him water in which bran had been soaked. The next day they fed him water in which a mixture of coarse bran and flour had been soaked. The next day they fed him water in which some flour was mixed. They gradually increased the thickness of the liquid until bit by bit his intestines widened. And I just want to pause here, and we'll come back to your stuff
beautiful.
later.
Yeah.
What's your what is Rabbi Tzadok digestion problems doing in the middle of this big story about the future of the Jewish people and the future of Judaism? Alisa? And then-
He was fasting as a way of trying to keep the city together. And so he was somebody that put his personal well-being on the line in order to try to save the Jewish people. And so it makes sense for Yochanan ben Zakkai as he's saying, and Yochanan ben Zakkai, by the way, we skipped over the episode of him getting out of the city. It was not easy peasy. It was not like he just easily smuggled out of the city. The Roman guards see him and they threaten to put a spear through the
No, the
coffin.
Bar Yonai threatened him. Yeah.
He plays dead, but it was not easy for him to get out of the city. He risked his life to get out of the city. He risked his life to do this. And so he's saying, I wanna honor this guy who risked his life to save the Jewish people, and I wanna ask that we are able to join together and to come up with a way to move forward.
I
Okay.
think this is a metaphor.
Yes.
I think it's a metaphor for moving. That there's a way that you can move slowly towards a better future. And this whole thing. This is very modern. Is it Gladwell? It's the tipping point.
Malcolm Gladwell? Yeah.
This is the tipping point. In other words, whether Yochanan ben Zakkai knew this was going to be the tipping point or not, this is the tipping point. And I think this is a very modern concept here that's being introduced.
Michelle, you've got the
Great.
penultimate point. and then
Yeah,
we'll
so
close
so
it.
it's actually
Rest of it.
just the reason that I lost it because it continues right here in the bottom of this page. If you
Yes.
can actually follow along with me in your sources, where you say, "Then I saw the wicked men who deserved yet to be buried, yet they came to destroy the temple, and they departed from that holy place. But eventually they will be forgotten in the city of Jerusalem regarding that which they had done in it." And then on the next page, you continue this narrative of the idea of being buried or being revealed, and what is seen, right? What we see is this transgression in the city. What is clear and what is obvious is the pain that we're enduring in this moment and the humiliation of what's happening in our temple. But ultimately, eventually, the Talmud is saying that will come to be forgotten. That's not the piece that we're going to hold on to. What will be revealed over time is that at some point we will be able to create something so beautiful and so transcendent that it will endure and survive even this. And in a sense, that's why I say I think it really serves the rabbis here to tell this story of the defamation, because the defamation sets the stage for ultimately that which is hidden becoming revealed over time, a Jewish tradition that is carried with every single one of us in our hearts, in our minds, in our books as we go throughout our world, and is not dependent only on one vision in Jerusalem over which we have to either fight and die or be killed, but rather can be transcendent and eternal and carried with us.
Right.
Yes, go
So
ahead.
shkoyach shkoyach chazdei Hashem. I just want to say, I think I love you, don't love that end, because I think it's much more equivocal than that and much more powerful for being equivocal. First of all, the notion that we're going to forget about the defamation and destruction. We have Tisha B'Av, we have the 17th of Tammuz, we have the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Every summer for the end of time, we spend 3 weeks thinking about how the Romans destroyed the temple, and right, and so we hardly forget about it. We make it a sacred obligation to remember it. We're still fasting about it, etc. Right, and the fact is that the story of the harlot and fornicating in the Kodesh Kadoshim is brought in this story.
What's your take?
That's
What's
not. I'm
your
not
take?
saying. I'm not
So
saying that it
my-
that
my- so
that
my- my
the
What's your
deeds will
take,
be
Julia?
forgotten.
so my point-
saying
here's
those
my
who
take.
committed
Right.
it will be
Right.
forgotten. Do we talk? Wait, hold on. Eliza can't even pronounce the name properly, right? Vespasian. We never.
Can in English,
He-
just for the record.
The idea is that
I'm the
these
troublemaker
are
here.
not,
Right.
Titus and Vespasian are not going to endure over time in our people, and their deeds are not going to be what defines us as a Jewish people, but rather
Right.
that we will find the resilience and the strength to be able to create a new beginning. And you're right, it does involve remembering this. I
Right.
think it's really important for our rabbis that we remember the destruction of Jerusalem always, and that we turn towards Jerusalem, but that doesn't become our only tool.
Okay,
Can
so
I
I want to
ask-
just close because we're out of time. I want to just close for the class and for the folks back home. I think there's really two really important takeaways to this story, and they're both in the nature of more of a question. One is what's so striking about the Talmud's origin story of the Talmud is that the central figure to me is such an equivocal figure. It's equivocal. It's not a clear. It's not a clear win, and it ends with the fornication story in the Kodesh Kadoshim, which you could read the way Michelle chose to read it. But the bottom line is, it's there. And one read is Elias's read, which is, hey, Yochanan ben Zakkai, what you did led to this. And so what I love about this is the comfort level with self-critique, and the comfort level, and it also says that leadership in tempestuous times is never easy to assess, and that leadership in tempestuous times is always going to be criticized and always judged, and who knows? And there's no perfect leader. Moses, it was judged. And I was thinking about, I have a special fond connection to San Francisco because our sons, Nat and Davide, live there. And I was just reading how San Francisco had a whole public debate about whether Abraham Lincoln High School was going to continue to be named Abraham Lincoln. Now, to me, Abraham Lincoln is, Moses, Muhammad, and Jesus Christ in one. If there's like one truly holy figure, like in the real world, it would be Abraham Lincoln. And the notion that they're even debating whether you're going to rename, fortunately, they're going to keep Abraham Lincoln High School. But the very fact that you could have this debate suggests, right, that and what I think the Talmud is telling us is there is no perfect leader. And when you look back in retrospect at what somebody did in the heat of battle, you could always critique and always Monday morning quarterback. And I love that in our rabbinic origin story, the rabbi who originated rabbinic Judaism is critiqued. And we're okay with that because, Abraham Lincoln is critiqued. Everybody is critiqued. FDR saved the world from Hitler. FDR did not save the Jews. FDR did not bomb the tracks. You could always critique everybody. And that's here's the last thing that this tells us, which is, Yehuda Kurtzer was lecturing on Sunday, and he talks about lessons from the pandemic. And his main point in his Sunday morning lecture, which is fabulous if you didn't watch it, was what we learned about Jewish community is about people taking care of people. And that the proving ground of the quality of a Jewish community, of any Jewish community, is does it take care of its people? Are people taken care of? So at one level, you want to say, isn't that a beautiful story here? Rabbi Tzadok, his constipation, his digestion, his issues, his food, intake, outtake. And here in the middle of worrying about the Jewish future, Yochanan ben Zakkai still has eyes for Rabbi Tzadok's digestion. That's the Jewish community taking care of itself. And that's chesed, chesed, chesed. Yes. And the big question, who did he not see? What about all the people who didn't get seen? What about all the people who didn't get a doctor? What about all the people who died? And the Talmud goes on in the tractate that Michelle has with the rivers of blood in the city. So he takes care of his friend, and he doesn't take care of the rest. Maybe he had no choice, and we're left with that open question, but we're left with the charge to be a place of chesed. Before, during, and after the pandemic, do we take care of our people?
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.